Crazy things have happened. The sky has fallen. Oh no.
It's
Um,
definitely fallen from my perspective.
yes, and that is Tagore. We have Tagore with us today to give analysis of the NAPD Most Wanted list. Hi Tagore, how are you doing?
Uh, I'm pretty good. I haven't actually played much Netrunner since World, and most of what I've been playing has been Food Coats and Prepaid Kate.
Because
And
you're a boring person.
I am a very boring person, yes.
And so I gather because of that, you're not very happy about this list at all.
Well, you see, I'm mixed about the list because I think that it does very little to Food Coats, and I think it basically makes Prepaid Kate completely dead.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any reason to play Prepaid Kate anymore. My version of Prepaid Kate now has 8 influence to play with.
Yeah, that won't do. That won't do at
Yeah.
all.
Which is obviously not viable at all.
But do you think we need these deck building restrictions? We are at a point where the dominant decks are going to be sticking around for a while.
Well, I definitely think that deck building restrictions make the game slightly more interesting, but I and I wouldn't have minded some sort of list or some sort of changes, but I'm just not a fan of these particular changes. I think.
Ah, okay. Yeah, but I do think we are at a point where we um could use a deck building restriction list because I think it's nice to see other cards being played.
Oh yeah, and yeah, sure. I mean, uh, it is boring to sit across from your 10th prepaid Kate in a
Yeah.
tournament. Uh, but I find that at least when I'm playing Netrunner at a high level tournament setting, I'd prefer to just have a good efficient deck to play with and against, and I feel much more fun than painfully watching my opponent's deck trying to combo off in a very contrived manner.
Yep, that is quite true. Yeah, and I guess it also makes the field more what do you call it? Unpredictable. There's gonna be a lot more crazy decks around.
That's very true. So I should probably preface all this that I've had experiences with another FFG LCGs, and I basically Game of Thrones First Ed, which by the end of it was basically a complete mess, and had a restricted list that was around 50 cards long.
And that was led by Damon Stone as well, was it
That
not?
was at least partially led by Damon Stone for a while before he moved to work on Netrunner.
Yeah, that's true. I am also not a big fan of what Damon Stone is doing. The moment he comes on as lead designer of Netrunner, immediately, hey, here's a restricted list. Let's go with it.
Well, I think it's definitely a very big difference in design philosophy between Lucas and Damon. I think Lucas was very adamant in that he didn't like the idea of any sort of restricted list or anything that artificially restricted deck building, and he preferred to push uh,
Conservative.
conservative things conservatively. I mean, I think Lucas probably was consulted on this, and I'm sure that he would have agreed to. He probably would have signed off to some of these lists, but ultimately, I think this list is looks very Damon-y.
I have to agree.
I mean, I think he's gone on the record of thinking mill decks are, are fun decks to play with, and anyone who's ever played against DLR Val disagree.
Well, at least Net Pavilion got enough.
Yeah,
But yeah,
I don't think that Pavilion getting nerfed. I think that would have happened anyway. I don't think there's any way they were going to let a deck that basically doesn't play Netrunner,
yeah, that's
survive.
kind of true.
It was just a deck that was just completely oppressive, and there was very little that a lot of corps could do about it, and other than shoving specific anti-tech cards into their deck.
Yeah, and I guess looking forward, I mean, if Damon Stone, I mean, if cards are printed, um, I hope cards will still be continue to be printed out conservatively because if they use this NAPD wanted list as an excuse for printing powerful cards and then fixing them later with the list, it's gonna create a lot of bad imbalances.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
hopefully, yep.
Honestly, I hope that Damon will just well, we haven't actually seen much of Damon's design. Any Damon design cards out yet.
That's true. Yeah.
Most of it, I think, as far as we know, Mumbad is still Lucas's cycle.
Yep.
So I'll probably reserve my judgment on Damon's Netrunner design.
Yep.
I mean, there are apparently some cards back in Spin Cycle that are very heavily Damon, and they honestly weren't too bad. Might even be a little bit underpowered. I think Reyna is definitely one of Damon's like pet cards, and she's basically unplayable now.
The chess pieces as well, I think.
Oh yes, and definitely the Kaiser, which I admit was a very cool idea.
It
Anyway,
is. Yeah.
yeah, and unfortunately they then printed Blue Sun, which completely any idea anyone playing chess.
Oh well.
I was like, okay, nice.
Nice knowing you.
Nice. I'm going to bounce the data pike that you put it on, or not nice tonight. I'm going to bounce the ice wall you put it on.
Yeah. And yeah, Shahrazad's initial ruling didn't help either.
No.
Alright, so let's move on. Unlike most other LCGs, if I am correct about that, their restricted lists are in the form of you cannot play this card and this card together, or this card and that card.
Yeah, so basically, the restricted list in Game of Thrones, and I believe that's how it. Well, restricted list in Game of Thrones is you have a list of 50 cards, and you can include one of those 50 cards in your deck.
And only one copy, I
And
assume.
well, no, you can include as many cards as you want, but you can only include one of those 50 cards in your deck.
Okay.
So for example, you could include 3 copies of one of them, which is a full playset. But if you include 3 copies of any one of them, you couldn't include any other cards. It doesn't sound it isn't as horrible as it sounds because a significant number of those cards were a faction specific card. So you really only had like 6 or 7 restricted cards to choose from a very, very big card pool.
But I don't think that fits well with Netrunner, as in it's too heavy-handed for Netrunner. Imagine if the equivalent would be you cannot play Biotech Labor and Astro Script in the same deck.
Oh, that would be horrible.
Yeah, it really stifles deck building. So I like that they're doing it, going easy on it.
The other restricted list that I know of is the way that they do it in Star Wars, which is restricted pairs. So you basically are not allowed to run. You can run 2 pods if they're paired. So this basically means that they can break up overpowered pairs of cards.
So X must go with Y.
Yeah. So X cannot go with Y.
Oh, cannot go. All right.
Yeah. This was basically just because 2 of the pods were just a bit too synergistic.
Yeah.
That's what I've heard from all my Star Wars playing friends. I've played around 6 games of Star Wars, period.
Yeah.
Anyway, can we move on to the list itself?
Yep, we should. Okay, so which cards should or should not be on the list? We'll do it systematically. We'll start with the efficient breakers, which are probably a bit more different from the others. We have Lady and York in this category. I classify breakers differently from the rest because each copy of a card gives you 1 less influence. But with breakers, you usually don't run 3 copies of them. In fact, you usually only need 1 copy, so it doesn't hurt you as much to play these cards.
Well, I suppose it depends on the deck. I think in Shaper you mostly just run 1 or 2 copies. But in most Anarch or Crim builds, I'd probably run 2.
You don't have to. Like, York, for example, you could supplement it with Zuki Master or Infection Code Breakers.
Yeah, sure, in Crim, but in Anarch, if you're running regular ass Max or reg ass Reyna or reg ass Valencia, you'd be running 2.
Even then, you could use AI breakers as well, which Anarchs have a lot of.
Mm.
Yeah, so I think it's not that bad. And I like this change because these really are too efficient for.
I think they admitted that Yogg was a mistake, and
Yep.
Yogg did stifle a lot of creative and interesting code gate breakers in much of the early game.
Yep.
Not code gate breakers, code gates, because there are a lot of very interesting low strength code gates, but because Yogg, such as IRS.
Yes, that's a pretty good.
IRS is actually a very interesting code gate now that Yogg's out of the picture. We're seeing absolutely no play because Yogg just gets through all of them for free.
Yep.
And yeah, quite frankly, just being able to break in combination with Data Sucker and Parasite Yog's weakness of being fixed strength really isn't a weakness. It can just get through most ice as long as you've set up well enough.
Yeah, and now with David in the carpool as well, it
Yeah.
doesn't help those code gates much more.
So the
So
only thing that is Yogg proof is Lotus Field. It is, however, slightly heavy handed. I mean, Yogg has dropped out of favor quite a lot recently,
it
just
has.
with Lotus Field. Um, so I'd agree that Yogg deserves to be on there, though I'm not sure that that this actually affects many people's decks. Like
Yeah,
it's
it doesn't. But I like its preemptive nature.
yeah, I think it's a good idea to put Yogg on there. I definitely don't have a problem with Yogg being on the list.
Yeah, I think it'll stick around for the rest of the time the wanted list is up, which is probably for the rest of Netrunner.
On
Alright.
the other hand,
Yep.
Lady, I'm a Shaper player to the core. I was once tabulating what decks I've played. Uh, I've taken the Netrunner tournaments, and I came to the conclusion that I basically played a mix of HB, NBN, and Wayland, but I was 90% of the time playing Shaper. And I understand why Lady should be on the list. I think she is too good, um, because the way FFU designed the factions, Shaper was supposed to be the code gate breaking faction and not the barrier breaking faction. And Lady is better at breaking barriers than Corroder is.
Yeah, that's a
Like,
problem.
obviously, they designed her with the built-in drawback that she's can only break X amount of four sets of
Yep,
two
subroutines, yep.
code, two barrier subroutines. But she's just so efficient breaking Eli. Having said that, I don't think she deserves to be on the list. Given what they put on the corp list, I think Lady sees so much play because Eli sees so much play, and honestly, against most other barriers, I would rather run Corroder. Against Wraparound, I'd rather run Corroder. Against Wall of Static, I'd rather run Corroder. Against Ice Wall, I'd rather run Corroder. Against Spiderweb, I'd rather run Corroder. Uh, and I think the lady is so dependent on other pieces to keep it going that I'm not sure she should be on the list. I think she is a bit powerful, but I think she's definitely very borderline for being on the list.
That is true. Now that you mention it, I have to agree with you. I think it needed to happen because, as you see, a lot of corp decks now are just playing less barriers, just 3 Elis and a wall stack or something because
Yeah.
Lady is too good. But on the same token, yeah, you are right. There are lots of situations where Corroder is just better.
Lady, this requires so much deck space to use. Like it's not like Corroder where you just like, okay, oh, whatever, I'll put in two. Lady, you need to have support. So you need to have support. You need to have two. You need to have, clone ships to allow you to recur her. You need to have scavengers.
And now the clone chips cost influence too.
And I honestly think that Lady was probably put on there to kill a certain archetype, and I'm not happy about that.
I think you might be right. The bright side is that you only really need one lady to use her in the deck, which is just one influence. But yeah,
but then if you're only running one lady, you're running lots of scavengers. And the thing about scavengers, it's a great card if you get it to work and if you get it late game, but you don't really want to draw it in the first half of the game.
nope, not at all.
It's going to clog up your hand, and you might have to end up discarding it. And when you actually need the scavenge, you're going to miss it.
Yep.
It's just, yeah. Like Lady is very very clunky without clone chip and scav. Oh, it's very bad with that. Any form of recursion. But it's very clunky, given that they've also put clone chip on the table, on the list.
Yeah.
So I don't completely agree with Lady being on there. I can see why they did it, but I don't agree with it.
Yeah, I'm inclined to side with you right now. You might be right on this. Now, there's something conspicuously missing here. There's a fractor, there's a decoder, but the most commonly played breaker in most tier 1 runner decks nowadays is a killer. It's called Mimic. Do
Oh,
you
yeah.
think Mimic should be on the list?
It's a difficult one. I think Mimic is overpowered compared to most other Sentry Breakers. I think it gets through things just slightly too efficiently. Um, But I also think that the reason Mimic was seeing so much play was because of a card that has also ended up on
Yep,
the list.
indeed. Yep,
Because it's the only efficient way of breaking that card.
that's true. Very true.
And to be honest, I I think putting Yogg on there was probably enough, and I think Mimic is less of an issue than Yogg.
Yep.
Um, and I think, and I probably think it's maybe even slightly less of an issue than Lady. And you can definitely take advantage of someone running mimics by running lots and lots of high strength sentries.
Yep. I
So
yeah, I agree with you. I think the problem isn't Mimic, but it's another card on the runner side. It's called Data Sucker, which I really think should have been on the list, but
yeah,
we can get to
well,
that later.
we can talk about that after we talk about its twin.
Yep.
Um, right.
Anything else?
Uh, yeah. I honestly I think the part of the problem with Lady is she's if they had made her 4 cost 2 strength, no one would play her because then she'd just be a worse corroder. But at 4 cost 3 strength, she's just a bit bad.
I think
Like,
4-2 is
she's just
fine.
too good.
4-2 is fine because firstly, you don't have to pay money to break barrier subroutines, so
Yeah,
you're saving up to 8 credits.
but you're only saving 6 because you paid 8 for her. You paid 2 more for her in the first place.
Now, assuming you use scavenge, that's free.
Okay.
Yeah. And more importantly, it costs 0 influence in the past for shapers, and that's pretty important.
Hmm.
I think 4-2 would have been somewhat balanced.
I think at that stage I would have just run snowball.
Possibly, possibly. I'll give you that. Alright, let's move on. Oh, the most the most controversial one, I guess. Ice Destruction. Clone Chip deserves a category by itself, to be honest. But let's start with Parasite. What do you think of Parasite?
Well, I think Parasite should have been printed with when the court purges virus count is trash Parasite.
Hmm.
But I haven't. But I think it's a bit too late to errata it now.
Yeah,
In just the ability for a 2 cost, program to with enough time destroy any ice is very strong.
it is.
And I think it was definitely somewhere above the curve. Having said that, I think it is somewhat important for ice destruction to be part of the game.
I think so
They
too.
designed a lot of cards with low strength and lots of subroutines to balance out the low strength.
Yep.
So, yeah. So I do think Parasite's an important card. I do agree with it going on the list because I do think that it is it is just slightly too powerful.
Hmm.
And I think that it synergizes too well with another in-faction card, which is Data Sucker.
Yep.
I think it would have been fine if uh, Data Sucker Parasite did not synergize, though I'm not really sure how you could actually board them so they wouldn't synergize, given that they both reduce the strength of the ice.
Hmm. I'm not too happy about Parasite being on the list. To
Huh?
me, Parasite feels like a small it's kind of like I mean you can't compare anything to Jackson Howard, but I think it's like the Jackson Howard of the runner side in that it has existed for a very long time and
Yeah,
a lot of things were balanced around it.
sure.
And yeah, I think Parasite is very important to the game because there are lots of ice which cannot be dealt efficiently other than just parasiting them down.
Come on, you.
And yeah, next ice is terrible.
Dice, yeah, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I would a lot of factions rely a lot on Parasite to get things done, and I think that's quite important for the game.
Mm. Yeah.
Because of that, they haven't really printed much Ice Destruction on the runner side. The only 2 cards I can think of are the Cutlery set and Apocalypse, both of
Well,
which
that's
are
four. Yeah.
yeah. So I think we need Parasite, and I mean Clone Chip already got the NAPD hammer, so I don't see why Parasite should be on the list as well.
Mm, I can see that. Um, I honestly would have preferred Errata to Parasite, but obviously they don't like Errata unless it's very
No.
minor.
I think Errata is very bad for the game. In fact, I'm not happy with the way they dealt with Wireless Net Pavilion. It was needed, don't get me wrong,
Yeah,
but this shouldn't set a precedent for future cards.
right.
Yeah. I would have rather seen Data Sucker in Parasite's place because, as you said, that's what makes the combo strong. You can
Yeah,
insta kill any ice with enough sucker counters.
and I suppose the thing about Data Sucker is it makes all the using all the fixed strength breakers quite effortless.
Yep.
Because with Parasite, you have to wait to tick down. You have to wait for them. You have to get them to res the ice, then you have to install the Parasite, then you have to wait to tick down. With the Data Sucker, if you're running from turn one, and the core obviously can't protect every single central server,
Yep.
so you're going to be able to just collect all these Data Sucker tokens. And the next time and when the corp actually finally gets around to resing the big high strength code gate or sentry ice, you have like 4 or 5 counters on Data Sucker, and you can just yog or mimic through it.
Yeah, you basically just blank out all the dangerous ice.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot more decks rely on Data Sucker than on Parasite.
Definitely agreed. Yeah.
So stuff like the old Andy Sucker list to prepaid Kate, which generally a lot of prepaid Kate lists don't run Parasite anymore. They run Vamp or they run David, but most of them still run Data Sucker.
Yep. And as for clone chip, this is a very problematic ban restriction because clone chip is the go-to solution for a lot of problems on the runner side.
I honestly think that clone chips restriction is actually inclusion is actually quite fair.
It is.
I believe clone chip was it was a bit overpowered it was a bit overpowered when it first came out.
One cost is very cheap.
It's very cheap for reinstalling anything from your heap at, without costing a click. Costing only 1 click and 1 cred to install. Being able to use it instant speed, so during a run.
Yep.
Being able to use it during a corpse turn, so you get an extra install with Kate's credit discount. And being able to clot with clone chip. It's just very, very efficient at what it does.
It is.
For one cost, it's very, very good.
Yeah, basically as you said, it helps you. It neutralizes destroyers, APIs, and fast advance, and gives you backup in case someone decides to battle you.
Yeah.
It does so many things. Oh, and it does parasite recursion as well, which is very
Yeah.
good.
Like the number of times that a run lot says end of your turn, I will parasite your thing.
Yeah.
Get counter, then just runs Data Sucker. Data Suckers it down and kills it.
I think.
I think it's fair. I think it definitely hurts Shaper. It hurts Noise as well because Noise loves his clone chips.
And Regas and Arc.
And every Regas that relies on clone chip to recur their parasites or breakers that they somehow got trashed.
Yeah.
But I think it's a fair card to restrict. I don't think it's I wouldn't complain too much about it. They probably should have just made it cost a bit more.
Probably, I agree.
Because especially when you compare it to Deja Vu, it's a lot better than Deja
Oh,
Vu.
way better.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Though Deja Vu is more flexible, this is far more.
Yeah, I don't doubt it. It's definitely ahead of on the power curve. I'm
Yeah.
just afraid that because it does so many things, it's so much utility packed to one card currently that now I think everyone has to adapt. You need a solution for destroyers, a solution for getting Claude out again,
Yeah.
and that's gonna hurt the runner side quite a fair bit.
And I think it's like Parasite. A lot of cards were designed with clone chip in mind.
Yep, agreed.
I think a lot of the stuff like not like on the runner side, this stuff like Sharpshooter, stuff like Deus Ex,
Yep.
were designed to be recurable with clone chip. Well, probably more Sharpshooter than Deus Ex, but Deus Ex came first. Came before clone chip.
Yep.
So more of a cards like Sharpshooter, but definitely the abundance of program trashing cards that are non-interactive on the corp side, so stuff like Keegan Lane, stuff like Marcus Batty, become a lot stronger with clone chip on this list.
Yeah.
And I think that's slightly worrying. I think it might genuinely be possible to completely lock a runner out of a server just by trashing all of their breaks at a particular time. And I don't think that's healthy for the game.
Well, but that's the beauty of the light-handed way with which they did the NAPD wanted list. I think people will still play clone chip, and I think shapers will still happily pay the 3 influence for it.
Mm, well, yeah.
It's just too good. It still
Yeah.
is too good. Yeah. Okay. So that's for the a couple more runner cards. Econ cards, prepaid voice pet, and Desperado.
Let's do Desperado first. I've got a long rant about prepaid.
Ah, here we go.
Okay, so Desperado. I mean, I can see Desperado going on the list. It's the most ubiquitous runner console, criminal console. It's very, very, very good at what it does. But on the other hand, I just think that criminals don't need this right now. Like, I don't think criminals in a particularly good place. I don't think they get better after this most wanted list.
Mhm.
And I think hitting Desperado is just hitting criminal even more because criminal already have to import their breakers because their infactive breakers genuinely suck.
Yeah.
Um, and they're losing, and they're having to pay more for their yards. They're having to pay more for their parasites, which a lot of criminals run nowadays. And I think this is just going to hurt criminal even more. And I know why they put it on there, but I think just from a faction balance point of view, I think I would have just left it off for now and probably consider putting it on if criminal was too dominant.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, because this list is organic, it can change.
Yeah.
You're right.
Like,
Yeah.
sorry, go on.
Oh, I mean, I really like this. I think Desperado should go on sooner or later because we need to see more diversity in terms of criminal consoles. We
Yeah.
need more forgers and uh, doppelgangers, which is pretty cool. But
I really like Doppelganger.
yeah,
It's a lot of fun to play with. And unfortunately, every time you play a deck with Doppelganger, you just look at it like, I wish you were Desperado.
yeah,
You'd have given me 15 credits this game rather than like 4 clicks.
mhm, yeah, and yeah, but I would hold my judgment because assuming the first Mombat cycle, I mean, data pack comes out soon, perhaps there'll be more strong criminal cards in there that will help offset this.
Yeah. That would, I mean, maybe this is a preemptive restriction because they know that there's some really crazy crim cards coming out in Moonbat, and they kind of are.
Yep. All right, so we'll reserve judgment on that. Now, prepaid voice pad, possibly controversial.
This is just wrong. Like, this is basically them saying that we do not want prepaid Kate to be a deck. Prepaid voice pad is a bad card in any deck except Kate. I'm gonna throw this out there. The thing is, the reason why it's good in Kate is because she installed it for 1, and you can install and sure gamble straight away. It clicks 1 and 2. Every other runner loses tempo and by installing prepaid voice pad, and 1 cred might not seem like a lot, but it does matter, and it does hurt, especially when you're behind and you don't draw your prepaid until late game. This is, I think, a restriction that mostly is aimed at Kate and at destroying Kate as a viable deck type completely. I just can't agree with this.
I think that's fine. I'm sorry, but I think that's fine. Kate is a bit too dominant. There are very few other competitive shaper decks out there. If there are, it's combo related, like Backbiter Chaos Theory.
Yeah.
I don't think. Yeah, I like how this is a subtle nerf to Kate. Like, short of putting Kate on the list herself. I
Well,
think
the thing about this is most of the Kate decks are running ladies already. They're already running clone chips. A couple of them are running parasites, and I just think that she was probably nerfed enough without the ladies and the clone chips, and probably having to rely on Corroder. I don't think the prepaids are necessary. I don't like. This is the only. There's no other deck in the competitive environment that runs prepaids.
like people will try to settle on a different breaker suite because Parasite Clone Chip is ruined, Lady is ruined. They will try to find a different breaker suite, but the Econ suite can still stay the same. They can still
But I
play.
think that's okay. That's a very, very like they're not restricting Katie Jones, and Katie Jones is still, a go-to economy engine for a lot of criminals and a lot of anarchs.
I true, and I guess it's diversity for the game, but
Yeah,
I don't. Sorry, go on.
so I just don't like them just hitting, specifically hitting one deck's econ engine.
I would say it's one deck. I would say it's mostly Kate, as you rightfully point out. The ability to install for 1 credit is really amazing.
Yeah, that's
Um,
problem with Kate rather than a problem with the card.
I think the biggest problem with the prepaid engine is that firstly it's too fast. Lucky Find Sure Gamble is way faster than most other econ nowadays,
Sure.
outside of criminal. And
Mhm.
more importantly, it allows you to float tags, which is a problem.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think it's fair that you have such a strong economic suite that cannot be dealt with by trashing resources.
Mm.
So I
Well,
I think I like it generally.
I mean, you could say the same about Magnum Opus. You can't trash a Magnum Opus. But
At least Opus costs 2 memory, which
sure.
is a pretty big downside.
But
Yeah. I
honestly, I
Yep.
think that the problem with resource economy is either you have to go completely tag free, or you because the difference between or or you go or you just say I'm giving up my economy. I'm gonna float tag just because the difference between one tag and 16 tags is very little apart from the being able to psychographic for 16,
Yeah.
and I think that is sort of a problem just because what like once you get beyond like 2 or 3 tags you just ignore them.
That's true.
I
Yeah.
think that's a design problem that they haven't really addressed yet.
Yeah, and
Uh,
that yeah.
like traffic accident, I get was an attempt to try to do this, but the,
Uh
there is no penalty for going beyond 2 tags. Apart from some very fringe cases like psychographics and running into a fully loaded information overload.
yeah, I mean, I think short of flatline, there's not much tag punishment that is adequate right now. So I think do, you do need an option to hit at the runner's economy.
Yeah, well, but I don't think hitting prepaid voice pad is it. I think Kate is probably one of the poorer runners. I think that people like to think that she's very rich because they see her go from like 0 credits to like 9 or 10 or 15 in 2 or 3 turns. But the fact is, Kate doesn't actually have that much money in her deck. I found that I'm generally richer than Kate when I'm playing a Regas Anarch deck with with Liberated Count and Katie Jones is just all going off, and I can much better play an Econ War. I think
That's just more of a problem with the Shaper IDs, isn't it? Like Exile and Professor are just sitting there in the corners, and Chaos Theory is like, I have a small deck, that's about it.
yeah, and I just find that Shaper isn't as rich as people think they are. It's just that Shaper never uses money when they run.
Yeah.
So especially prepaid K. So people think she's rich, so they think that hitting her economy is a good idea, and I don't think it is. I would have at least liked the prepaid engine to be a viable economy engine without costing 9 influence.
Mm, yeah, that's possible. 6 influence is a pretty hefty penalty as it
You're
is.
already paying 6 bit influence for Lucky Five,
Yep.
and and paying 3 more for prepaid voice badge just kills the deck. And I don't think you can run prepaid without the prepaid voice pad because, quite frankly, the difference between running a Kate deck with your prepaid at turn 1 and a
Oh, yes.
prepaid at turn 20 is
It's
just so
huge.
huge, and you will notice.
Yes, yes, definitely.
With that, and know that you never get your prepaid out. It's you have to be a lot more cautious with your money, and cards like Dirty Laundry that were kind of good are now just bad.
It's still fine in criminal. It's
Yeah,
fine.
it's finding criminal with the Desperado, Desperado security testing engine, but in Shaper, where you don't really want to run anyway, it's just bad. You're paying 2 to get to gain 5 if you have an empty server that is not Jackson.
Yeah. And I
Yeah,
guess the worst thing is that it hits the neutral runners, which honestly don't are just collateral damage at this point.
I'm not sure which one the neutral runners run prepaid. But okay,
Apex, I think.
okay, I'll take your word for it.
I mean, Apex cannot use resources.
Right,
Prepaid
so
is
that's
next to
when
it.
Apex needs to use the prepaid engine.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't play Jank.
Okay, neither do I. Let's move on. Okay, before that, any other runner cards you want to give a shout out to that should be on the list?
Well, we talked about Data Sucker
Yep.
briefly. I definitely think that should be considered.
Like, same.
I this might sound heavy-handed, but I would like to see a Count Siphon go on.
Aha, account siphon. Yes.
I think it's a card that's very good. I wouldn't. I'd like to do it in such a way that Account Siphon goes doesn't cost extra any influence for criminal, but costs
Yes.
one extra for everyone else.
Yep.
Because I think there's a lot of decks right now that use account siphon just for fun.
They are well.
Yeah, the Val in particular, and the ability to just repeatedly spam account siphon is just not really fun to play against.
Yeah, agreed.
It's very like I was sitting next to a newbie playing against account siphon spam, and it just felt so bad. I really just wanted to go over to the game and say, okay, seriously, he's a newbie. This is like third week at Tuesday Night Netrunner. Please don't play account siphon spam against him.
Yeah.
Oh, the other card that I think should be worth considering is DDoS.
Ooh.
DDoS is very interesting. Is it's basically a broken combo enabler. It allows you to siphon, without allowing the corp to res the ice. It allows you to do some crazy, stupid, false echo shenanigans. It it's almost as bad as blackmail to play against in some ways.
Uh, I think the DDoS siphon combo costs enough influence such that it's not that good.
Mm. Well, it's mostly used play an Anarch. So yeah, sure, it costs like 12 influence for the siphons. The Anarch also has data view and data view in faction, and same old thing against neutral. And I think DDoS siphon is like I think DDoS is enough of an issue on its own.
I'm not. I don't know. I think that isn't very necessary at this point.
Uh, it might just be I don't like some cards.
Probably, I think. Probably.
Oh, another card that I would like to throw on, and I'm sure everyone will disagree with me, is blackmail. I think the thing about blackmail is it means that you have to. It is one of those massive one of those cards that you need a silver that is uninteractive and you require silver bullets to. So by silver bullets, I mean cards that either allow you to res ice on a turn, or defensive upgrades like Caprice and Ash.
I don't know. With ice getting stronger now because Parasite is gone and the efficient breakers are gone, I don't think that. I mean, it's nice to have other options to
Yeah,
get past ice.
sure, but the fact that that Val can just run 3 blackmail without any consequences is just a bit strong. I think her ability is already strong enough on its own without, allowing her to use blackmail in without paying influence as well. I think if any card that belongs on that list, it's blackmail. Like you can get into any server without the corp being a Trez Ice, but you're paying influence for it. I think that would be a fair trade-off. We're not
Mm,
talking about a ban here.
yeah, that's true. It's not a ban. Yeah. Yeah, possibly. In any case, it's gonna rotate out sooner or later, so
Well,
no problem.
that's not from a couple of years.
Yeah. All right. So that's the runner side. We're still not done yet. We're just half done. So props to all of you who have made it this far through the video, but there's still a lot more. Tune in tomorrow where I will upload the second half of this featuring the corp half of the NAPD Most Wanted list as well as a bit of discussion on other changes in the FAQ, the new updated FAQ. In the meantime, thanks for watching, happy night running, goodbye.